So this is Coach Cameron with my soccer podcast with Tom Byer. I'm so excited about having Tom, and we're about to be on Facebook Live. We're live on Facebook. Tom, this has been a long time coming for you and I to actually meet. We met at the LA convention, but this is right. Like intimately, this is the first time we really met.
That's right.
So what do you remember? How do you remember us actually connecting?
I remember I did. Well, first of all, when one of the Japanese boys, Sugihara Ryo, came here, that's how you kind of got on the radar screen. And I could see, I started following his success, which was, you guys are big leaders out here in the junior college space. So that's how you kind of came on my radar screen at first, because Ryo was coming here. He was very successful. You guys were winning championships and things. And I guess we connected through that relationship. But you're right. The first time we physically met was I was invited out to Los Angeles to speak at the coaches convention. I think it's got a different name now, United Coaches, whatever it's called. It used to be called the NSCAA, something or other.
Yeah. And you were actually the first time I heard you speak live was that whole, like, you were on that panel, DA versus ESNL, and how it relates to U.S. soccer.
Well, because my good friend Anson Dorrance, he recruited me for that. He knew I was coming out to speak. So I did a couple of things during that visit. I did my my regular talk that I do, the kind of soccer starts at home type of talk. And then I also was on a panel discussion about the future of the girls' game. Mm-hmm. And I think Christian Laver is the president of ECNL, April Hendricks, who was overseeing the women's program, one other, and Anson moderated it.
Yeah.
And I talked about the Japanese soccer and football. And then I was on another panel discussion, too, with Tab Ramos, with Fred Lipka, who's the technical director for MLS, Romeo Jozak from the Croatian FA, and the French technical director and the head of German coaches education, Bert Stober, who I've presented to before. So that was the time that we met. And I remember you coming up to me and introducing yourself, and that's kind of where it started. And we've more or less kept in touch ever since.
Yeah, what was interesting was, so Ryo Sugihara, how I found him was one of my past players, Tae-Hoon Kim, who actually he's from South Korea, and he was playing in the Asian League in San Diego, where Ryo was learning English at the English Learning School of UCSD.
Yes.
And he wanted to play soccer, but he didn't qualify for Division I. Yeah. So Tae-Hoon brought him out here.
So I hooked that up in San Diego with a friend of mine. So the long story short, I knew Ryo, the correct Japanese pronunciation, Ryo. He was on the under-12 select national team that we had, and I was the head coach in Japan. So I took him to a tournament, and he was my captain, and he broke his foot, or fractured his foot, actually playing in a tournament in Australia. And then from there, I introduced him to one of the big, very famous soccer high schools in Japan called Teikyo High School. Mm-hmm. And he went there. He went to the national tournament. And then he wanted to do something. His father I knew the father quite well, and the father asked me, what would you recommend? He wants to go to this college, that college. I said, listen, do yourself a favor, send him overseas for a year, study English, let him go and get a college education. I knew he was good enough. No matter where he went, he would do well. So he wound up in San Diego because I had friends there. So he went there. He stayed with them for a little short time, and then he played on Brian Quinn's team. Do you remember Brian?
The Mighty Quinn?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm an indoor guy, so I know the Mighty Quinn.
Brian Quinn, he played on his team. And then from there, I wasn't quite sure how he came down to you in Phoenix, but he had been playing with Brian, and Brian was quite impressed with him as well. Okay. And then, that was...
Yeah, Brian Quinn of San Diego Sockers.
That's right. So, he was a Sockers.
Well, I never knew that part of it. That's very interesting.
That's right.
And Ryo was also on, like, when you were doing your clinics in Japan where you get like 1,000 participants and stuff, you identified him as the top player at one of your clinics.
No, what happened was that, I was doing a thing for Canon, sponsor, and I was going around, and we were doing these mini futsal tournaments. And my job was to, out of these thousands of boys, I had to pick 16 kids. So he was the one. So I got a pretty good eye, at least for talent, I suppose. Huh?
Yeah.
At least it worked out here at Phoenix College, that's for sure. So I picked him. He came. Then we went and played this tournament down in Australia. And then after that, because he had broken his foot, I just felt terrible. I mean, it's a little bit too much of me becoming too Japanese, but I felt this like responsibility for this boy, who's on my team, breaks his foot. That's why I introduced him to Takeo High School. And then after Takeo, I felt some responsibility to try to help him out. But what happened was, while he was still in a cast, after I came back from Australia and he played in the tournament, I was doing an event with Real Madrid players, Beckham, Zidane, Cambiosa, all the Adidas players. So I went to the Tokyo Dome and I did a soccer clinic in front of 40 or 50,000 people. And Dio came to that clinic because he had the broken foot. I did a special thing just to get him onto the pitch because, again, I felt sorry for him. His father came all the way up from Shimonoseki, which is it's an airplane ride up, and he came to that clinic as well. And so, yeah, again, anyway, that was that relationship with Dio. But yeah, you're right. Out of a couple thousand kids, I picked him as one of the best of the 16. And
yeah, that's it's fun. It's Takeo High School, so I had two kids from Takeo.
Okay.
Sakai Iohara, which we talked about earlier, and then Rio. And they told me the position they played was Sakai played left back and Rio played right back.
Yeah. Okay.
And they came here. I'm like, no, you guys are both our center mid. So we played 210s because they were more technical than everyone on my team.
Well, even Dio, he played in the midfield for me when he played the under 12s. But again, when he went to the high school, that sometimes that happens, right? A coach says, nope, happened to me. When I was going to Ronda Valley High School in upstate New York, I was basically usually the central midfielder, center forward, back and forth. But when I went to college, my coach, George Visvari at Ulster County Community College, he said, you're going to be right back. And I basically remained playing right back.
Yeah, that's happened to me as well. But I said no, and my career came to an end, I think, because of it. But well, let's talk about, so you're in town. This is the second time you've been to Phoenix.
Yes.
In the span of how many years? Because
20 years.
20 years. It's a lot different today.
I came here. Some of your listeners might know, or at least the people in the community might know, Paul Mariner, who's a dear friend of mine, former striker for England, played in 1982 World Cup Spain, scored 2 or 3 goals, played for Arsenal, Ipswich Town, wound up in the United States. And he was, I believe it'd be the equivalent to, I think in those times, maybe the DOC, the director of coaching of a club called Paradise Valley.
It was Paradise Valley Shamrocks.
Yes. So I came out to visit Paul, and I stayed with him for a couple of days. So that was my first and I think only visit to Phoenix.
Yeah, it's a lot different today. So now you're here today. So let's talk about what brings you here to Phoenix.
Sure. Well, I've been in Japan for 36 years. Again, the long story short is I'm purely a technical coach. And I wrote a book called Soccer Starts at Home, Football Starts at Home, depending on what country you're in, which basically shows, backed up by research and a little bit of science as well, the role that parents play in a child's development, with the idea that culture, if you study, if you consider there's 211 country FIFA member associations that make up FIFA, and only 8 have won a World Cup tournament. Right, you got Uruguay, Argentina, Brazil, Germany, Spain, Italy, France, and England. So when I started studying these countries to find out, is there some kind of special secret sauce of coaching going on? Do they have better facilities? And what is it? Again, D, none of the above. I thought, and I researched that these countries had these cultures that were very conducive to developing player and the role that the parents played, and to really get to the crux of it is that a majority of those countries that develop the best players, those kids get a much earlier start. So they're off to a flying head start way before the rest of the other kids are. And what do I mean by that is that most of those kids that develop into the best players, they've got a ball. They've been exposed to a ball at their feet as early as soon as they can walk. And it's not just kicking. This is the whole thing. The entry level for our sport, unfortunately, is kicking or shooting. So it's this whole idea of, can you start nurturing small children and encourage them to be more of a manipulator of the ball than the entry level, which is usually shooting or kicking. So if you go out into any park around the world, usually they're filled with parents that are just kicking the ball back and forth with the little child. So what we're trying to do is to engage parents, to engage with their kids, and with just a couple of things, don't encourage kicking all the time. Encourage more of that pulling the ball back. And it's just, backed up with a lot of science and research as well now that shows that the earlier you start, the better. A child's brain, 80% of a child's brain is developed by the age of 5 or 6. So I often say this in my talks, but the soccer world hasn't caught up to what science already knows, and that is that skill acquisition and learning technical skills happens much earlier than the soccer world supposes. So that's really what my work is these days.
So, so this Saturday at 2:30 p.m., you're doing a lecture here at Phoenix College. It's a free lecture. Can you? What would one get out of your lecture?
Sure. So it's about a 90-minute presentation, 45 minutes to an hour of the like a PowerPoint presentation that I have, and then a 30-minute question and answer. So what I'm doing is I'm showing parents or just anybody involved in the game. I'm showing the progression and the transformation from a child from the time they can start walking and standing, what I did with my 2 kids. So the whole presentation is based upon what happened with my 2 boys. So I introduced these small balls to my kids into the living room. Most of it happened inside the house, and I go over all the science and the reasoning and of what's happening, that connection between why is the parent more important than the coach? What could you expect? What kind of outcome could you expect if you've got a 2 or 3-year-old? Most people can't really tell you what the difference between what a 3 or 4-year-old should be able to do versus the 5, 6-year-old. Or 7 or 8-year-old, but what it even really means to be a good soccer player from a young age. So I take families and people through that, and I show them really from a span of over a decade of exactly how my kids developed and what I did with them, and really break it down and make it pretty much idiot proof. I mean, and the good thing is that anybody can do this. And then I also show examples of lots of other kids from around the world that I've never met, but I've interacted with. They either read our book or they came to one of our events or they heard me on a podcast such as yours, and they put a plan in place. And I can show now, every time I do this presentation, it's a different presentation because I'm always updating it. I'm always learning other things as well. I feed off of, even families and coaches. I'm very lucky because I literally go around to some of the biggest club teams in the world that invite me. Been invited to Manchester United. I presented to the guys at Dortmund, Ajax in Holland, Dynamo Zagreb in Croatia. Recently, there's been talk about me going out to Bayern Munich as well. I just got invited to River Plate in Argentina, Bordeaux in France. So I'm saying that not to pat myself on the back, but more or less I've taken this football or soccer starts at home and I've basically bulletproofed it. I've shown the best of the best, trying to expose myself to ridicule. And all I can tell you is it's been unanimous in what I've found, and that is that there's a bit of a black hole in development that people who you would think would know better are entrusted with development don't quite understand how development takes place with young kids.
And do you touch base, kind of like what we talked about lunch, about the academic portion where what happens in a child's mind academically when they do this kind of work with the ball at home?
Well, that's the big breakthrough, and I'm very fortunate because when I was writing the book Soccer Starts at Home, I was contacted by one of the world's premier neuropsychiatrists, foremost psychiatrist in the world from Harvard University Medical Center, Dr. John Rady, and we just finished writing the book, and basically he asked to read the manuscript. I sent it to him, and so again, long story short, he wound up writing the forward and the afterward of the book. So I've learned more from Dr. Rady about soccer development than I've learned from any other coach in my 35 years of coaching. So what the takeaway is that when kids are interacting with their parents, it's that parents' understanding of a child's need for parental approval, which really creates that kind of we call chemical electrical process in the brain, which is emotions. So anytime you can create an emotionally charged environment, that's where deep learning and long-term memory takes place. So the football world or soccer world hasn't quite understood that. Because when you talk about the countries that develop the best players, let's say Brazil, for example, people say, well, Brazil, football's a religion. Everybody plays football. But it was this correlating and connecting a lot of dots that I started kind of seeing a lot of these kind of common denominators. So I've studied a lot of players, and I'm like possessed by it. And now, because I've got contacts around the world, anytime someone sees an article about football or soccer having started at home, they send it to me. So I've got a whole library of all these players. Yeah. So I was reading something about Neymar, and there's a whole slide in there about Neymar in my presentation. But Neymar's father said it so perfect. He said, people don't understand. Kids don't fall in love with football in Brazil. They fall in love with the ball. They fall in love with the ball first, and that leads to falling in love with the game. So then I start again connecting the dots, correlating, and think, well, isn't it that we try to force kids in America to fall in love with soccer, but the ball gets in the way? And it's almost as simple as that if you can figure it out, right? So when a little 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old is playing with a ball, such as I introduce that to my kids, that's the whole compelling thing. When moms and dads or grandpa or grandma, they see my presentation, they see what my little 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old can do in the context of the home, not a team. When my little guys, 3 and 4 years old, were playing with the ball, they had absolutely no context of playing on a team with teammates on a big pitch with a coach, winning, losing, and nothing.
Right.
So when you can get those kids to fall in love with the ball like they do in those strong cultures, that's when the magic happens.
Yeah. So it's funny. My daughter, she's one of the few women who still play beyond season. So she plays in this co-ed league at school, and she got recruited, obviously, but she loves playing. She looks forward to it all the time. And she has there's like 6, 7 Hispanic guys that come to her games, probably to try to date her, but they all chant in Spanish, calling her the female Messi, because she can do so many cool things with the ball. And it's always cool to see a female embarrassing men. And, but she sent me that message the other day, just made me so proud of that. She loves the ball and she keeps playing today. And most women that I've seen out here from my experience don't play after season. They don't go and compete and do pickup games because they don't like the ball. They link soccer as misery because it's running and it's a lot of win and no manipulation of the ball whatsoever.
You find the great players, whether it's on the men's game or the women's game, the ones that are really, really at the top of their game, they don't just play, they watch, they study it, they're obsessed by it.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference. We talked about it over lunch a little bit about the women's program here, 4 times World Cup champions, 4-time Olympic gold medalists. But the reality is the people who are in the know realize that there's some concern to be had about the women's game here, because in Europe, these countries now have made a giant leap forward, not an incremental one. Most countries do an incremental step forward, but these countries have taken a giant leapfrog over the rest because they come from soccer cultures. So these girls are not just playing it, but now they're sitting around the dining table and they're a little bit more interested because dad or grandpa or uncle or whoever is talking about the game. And Heather O'Reilly said it when she was a guest on my show for the Sirius XMFC. And she said it best. She said, listen, she said those women, when she went to play at Arsenal, she said she was very surprised at how, quote unquote, marinated they were in a soccer culture. The difference between just playing and watching it, talking about it, discussing it. It's a completely different level. And unfortunately, here in America, most girls play, but they don't watch.
Yeah, that's certainly the truth. So, so this Saturday, 2:30, we're inviting all academic, coaches, parents, anyone's interested in the studies that you do. I've been fortunate enough to actually see the videos and see your presentation in LA, and I'm excited seeing the new presentation and with the new additions. But I am fascinated to see what the videos I saw of your son at 1 and then at 2 and at 3 all the way to 8, the videos I've seen, the difference. And even when you bumped in the hall with Mark Mejia, our football coach, he was shocked when he saw when your son was 8 doing what he was doing in the bedroom of his home. He was like, "What the heck?" I mean, he was shocked.
Well, I've got
were.
Some new stuff now. Again, I can't claim original discovering this, but again, because I'm hanging out with some of the top neurologists and psychiatrists in the world, that I've got a video. Some of the videos that I have of my kids playing, doing things, I couldn't explain the science behind it. I could just show it and people would be impressed, like you're saying, wow, they're doing it. But I can now explain exactly what the science is of why. And I've got one that's my favorite video now, and I only discovered this recently again from the neuro guys, where there's a ball that's coming, and it's a video, and it starts with my son has his head over his shoulder like this, and the ball is up in the air. Now, what's important about that? That's mathematics. So he's basically gauging the trajectory, the distance from the ball, the speed of the ball, the timing, and the angle. And when the ball comes down, he does something that's just you would think is a fluke, but there's a reason, because he's basically mastered the ball. So he can tell by the amount of time that a child plays with the ball at their feet. There's a study, again, doing research about Messi. And Messi, when he was a small child, everywhere he went, he did things with the ball at his feet. And the ball always stayed within very close proximity. That's mathematics. He's measuring. And the more complex the movement, the more complex the math becomes. So now we can show, just not people who are interested in our sport, but now one of the big things that we're doing is we're working with educators. I just came back from Houston. I work with the Houston Dynamo, and we met with the mayor's office, the director of education. And when we showed her the presentation, she was just quickly, when can we start? We've got 17 school districts, and we're doing something similar with discussions with the mayor's office in Denver and some other places. So this has taken on a much bigger implication other than just, soccer per se. That's why when the parents come to our event, we call them ignition events. We call them ignition events for a reason. We're trying to ignite this fire inside a parent who will go and actually take action. Also, we've got these things that we call 15-week challenges. We've got these little WhatsApp and Facebook closed groups where we've got 10 or 15 families in them, and we start from day one, 15 weeks, and we show them exactly what they can do. Ball mastery in the house, the slide, moving the ball back and forth. And by the 15th week, we also show those in our presentation, the outcome. So again, I'm trying to kind of shock people in to see that these beliefs and these expectations, or the lack of, that we have of small children not being able to do anything, just give them a ball and they should just be kicking it all the time. I'm trying to crush that and show no, 3-4-year-old kids can be able to do X, Y, and Z, and here's the proof.
Right. So if you guys want to learn more about Tom Byer, this Saturday, 2:30 p.m. at Phoenix College, sign up online, go to coachcameron.com and sign up online as soon as you can, and then we can give you updates, exactly location and all that. But we will have our Phoenix College men's team will be distributing information. We'll have A-frames and stuff directing people where to go at Phoenix College, but parking's going to be good because it's a Saturday, and it'll be pretty easy to get to the event. So we're very excited about having you here, Tom, and I'm excited about doing a couple more podcasts leading up to the big event on Saturday. So what else can they find information about you directly?
I'm on social network. You could just Google my name, Tom Byer, and put the word soccer in. There must be literally hundreds of articles. So I'm not hiding anything. I think the difference between reading what I've done online and coming to an event is actually seeing the presentation. The presentation isn't online. If you read our book, Soccer Starts at Home, that's quite different than the presentation as well. But it's a good opportunity for parents to come out. And, because I've been doing this so much, I mean, very rarely, if ever, I can even remember that anybody goes away dissatisfied. So I think this is a very good opportunity for parents to become engaged and knowledgeable about how they can help their kids. And again, you don't have to have ever played the game at all. Zero. I'll show you outcomes of kids that can do things as good or better than my kids from parents who never played, but they understood the philosophy and they put an action in place.
Nice. Well, I'm going to end this segment and, end the podcast. We'll be back tomorrow, maybe later tonight, depending on what exactly is going on. But please come tomorrow, or excuse me, Saturday. We keep getting confused on dates. Saturday.
That's right.
I know it's President's Day weekend, but if you're free, Phoenix College, go to coachcameron.com, and right in the front page, you'll see everything Tom Byer, and it's easy to figure out. But please sign up so we know who's coming, so we can give you proper directions and information leading to the event. So thanks again, Tom, and we'll do this again. I have several more Facebook pages and stuff I want to get to, but thanks again for coming on, and it's great to finally have you and really have you versus just kind of, hey, Tom in LA.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the whole weekend.
Yeah, welcome at Phoenix. Thanks. And we are out.